Today I sit down with Brian Hoyland, who had a beautiful near-death experience where he saw the face of Jesus, and Jesus sent him back to earth with 3 messages. Comment in support of Brian for sharing his story. Thanks for watching. When I first met Jamie of Refractive Healing, I was coming out of a very challenging time. I felt anxious, overwhelmed, disconnected from myself, from Source, and from my divine guidance. But during my first session with Jamie, something shifted. In the safe space created by Jamie's presence and healing intuitive gifts, I was able to receive a clear message from my guides for the first time in months. Every day you guys ask me the same question: how can I connect to my guidance? I would like to share this gift with you. A simple and effective way that I was able to reconnect with my guidance is by booking a distance healing session with Jamie of Refractive Healing. Click here or check the pinned comment for the link. Thank you to Jamie of Refractive Healing for partnering with me in this video.
I had a really serious, I still have it, a really serious autoimmune disease that attacks my organs, and it destroyed my heart. And over time, without me even knowing it, my heart started to be eaten away from the inside out. And that led me to be going to chronic end-stage heart failure. So I was living with that for about 5 months, and then I ended up having a cardiac arrest. So what led up to the cardiac arrest was I went into a really bad heart failure event, and for about 7 hours, I was fighting in the ER, trying to stay alive. And they were trying to get me stabilized so they could move me up to the ICU where I could, get a little bit better care. But they just couldn't risk moving me up. Finally, they thought they had me stabilized enough that they could. They transferred me from the ER bed to the ICU bed. And that's when I just went into cardiac arrest. And it took a while for me to actually die. So, I mean, even that was, just an increase in the amount of pain and suffering that I was having. But, I was having moments where I could pray. I was confessing everything I've ever done. I was just going through, I think when you get to that point in your life where you're going to die. And I knew that whole time I was there, it just felt like death was looming. But, I thought about all the things that I had done to harm other people. It wasn't the selfishness that I think, we have in life where we kind of like, oh, I wish this would happen for me or that, it was more about, I wish I wouldn't have done this to that person. So I was really talking to God about that, but I was, I was scared. I'm going to admit it. I was really nervous. And so when they call in this crash team, imagine a whole bunch of people, medical personnel coming in, and they don't all talk to you. They do ask you questions periodically, but they have their own duties that they have to fulfill. So they're talking to each other a whole lot more. They had one nurse who was doing most of the communication with me. But it felt like, in the Wizard of Oz, when those flying monkeys come flying in and, in that dark woods, I mean, everything was dark around me. It really felt ominous. I knew that it was really close to where I'm going to die. And here are these people grabbing my arms, my legs, and, doing things with me that, just, you had no control over your own body. So I just remember I was really having a tough time praying, knowing that I was about to die. And yet at the foot of my bed, there was a crucifix hanging on the wall. And it was like a shining beacon reminding me of, just how important it is to have my faith. So I prayed, and it just came out easily. And all of a sudden there was a comfort. I was still worried, but I didn't have that ominous anxiety. I just felt a peace, like, okay, I can die now. And so I just closed my eyes and I stopped answering questions. The last thing I could say, I could barely get it out. They're shoving things in your face and in your mouth. And, I could barely get it out, but I said, I don't want to talk. And that was the last thing. It took every little bit of strength I had left. And that's when I died. I felt this shake and this pop, and my soul ejected from my body. And so I find myself in this dark tunnel. And in this dark tunnel, I'm looking at this dark void. It's just immense space. And it looked like, when you look at pictures of outer space, just without any luminous beings, no moon, no stars, no sun, nothing, but just darkness, just emptiness. And I had this thought, like, because I should say my intelligence immediately increased. So I was able to remember my whole life. I mean, things were flooding into my mind that I had never thought of for 20, 30 years. And so, I mean, I had all this at my access, but I was thinking, this cannot be it, to have this sudden surge of intelligence, and I'm being flooded with love and joy and peace. And I can't even explain the immensity of that love and joy. It made that death I had just suffered like wonderful. I couldn't care less about it. It was so far removed from the joy and the peace and the love that I was feeling that I didn't even care about it. And I knew I had just died. And it was so cool because I died and I didn't have this loss of consciousness. I remembered, everything leading up to my death. I remembered the exact moment of my death. And then here I am, still carrying and taking in new memories because I'm in a place I've never been before. So there was no break in my conscious thought. But I thought to myself, this can't be it. It can't be that I just feel this love and joy, and I stare off in this dark void, and there's nothing more than that, because I could tell the love and the joy and the peace was not coming from that dark void. I could feel it was somewhere else. And when I said that, I realized I'm looking into this dark void. I could see the depths of it. I could see into it. So there had to be light. And I realized that there was light right behind me, and I could see it the whole time, which was really bizarre because, like I said, my intelligence is so much more increased. So I had all of my memories that I've ever had, including when I just arrived to this place. So I knew I had always been seeing into this darkness, but I just for some reason, I wasn't focusing on the light behind me. So I was focusing on this darkness. And that becomes an important aspect to my story, is that everything that I focused on, I have a very clear memory of. But there's a lot of things that I could see, but since I didn't focus on them, for some reason, I'm blinded to it now. I don't have good memory of what I did see. So like even this tunnel, I have an idea of what it looked like, but if I tried to speculate about that, I'm going to interject my own personal opinion. So I think it's better that I just stick to what I actually saw. And so when I saw that light, I said, well, I want to see that light. I want to turn to it. And I actually had to physically turn. I didn't have to, because I could still see the dark void behind me and I could see the light at the same time. There was no disruption in my vision. I could see in 360 degrees and at the same time. So there was nothing that was out of my view. And so I'm looking at this light now after I actually manually made this turn. And I said, I want to be with this light. And just having that thought, I was instantly there with the light. But I didn't feel wind on my face. I didn't feel any kind of inertia or any kind of propulsion or G-force or anything that would give me the impression that I had moved as quickly as I had. But I did. I moved that quickly. And yet I could remember every single step I took. And so that was really cool that, I was there instantly, yet it could have took, this was a long way away. So it could have took me forever to walk that far, but it didn't. It just instantly I was there. And yet I still had this memory. And as I'm staring at this light, it was so magnificent, so resplendent. It was the most beautiful light, but it was so bright that I was actually thinking, I cannot believe this light doesn't hurt my eyes. That's how bright it was. It was something that when you see it, you're like, there's no way I could look at this light. You would think you'd have to look away, right? And it was like filling my soul with this love and this peace. It was clearly coming from that light, and it felt good. It was permeating into my soul. And so I'm playing around with my vision because I thought this was really cool, is that I could see up and down, both sides, all at the same time. There was no obstruction. I could still see the dark void behind me and in that tunnel. But what I was doing is I was trying to find the ends of this light. And it's really hard to describe this. It's like, imagine driving in a car. You're seeing all these new features as you go down the road, but yet you were able to still stay in the same place you started from and still see that. That's how my vision was, and it was going in all directions. So it was it's un it's I'm not even able to comprehend it. And I saw what I was doing, because I can't recreate it, but I have that memory of it. It was incredible to be able to see in all these directions and actually watch my vision grow as it's searching out the end of this light, and I couldn't find it. It was endless. So this massive light of love, that's permeating into me, was completely endless. And I knew it was God. I didn't see a body, so I didn't see a physical form. So I mean, it could be emanating from God, it could be just God's light, his aura. I can't explain that. But I do know that what I was looking at was God. And as soon as I thought about that, that's when he said I could come in the light. So I walked right into the light, and it was so beautiful. It felt like this river of love was rushing right into my soul. And the only way I can really describe this is like when you drink from a straw and you have fluid down in the cup, when you drink up, that straw becomes full of that fluid as it's going into your mouth. But it's always new fluid. It's never the same one unless you just hold it there. But this wasn't how it was. It was rushing into me, and it was wonderful. It was like I was getting this new sensation of love, and just a different aspect of it. I felt so overwhelmed, and yet just fully at home. It was the most comfortable I've ever been. And I think if you imagine the most disgusting thing that you could ever imagine, you would be willing to sit there with that disgusting thing. I think of Shawshank Redemption, this movie that this guy has to escape from a prison, and he has to escape through a sewer pipe of feces and whatever else the prisoners have expelled down to this river. But it's like 500 yards or something like that. That's a long way to run, let alone crawling through a little pipe filled with gross, disgusting things. But I would have gladly sat in that for the rest of eternity just to feel that love. That's how intense this love was. I hope that it doesn't do justice to how incredible it was, but I think that gives people an idea of just how much better that love is than anything we can endure here on life. So I had just died this horrible death, and I was so happy. I couldn't have been happier, because this love, as I said, it was like rushing into me. It was filling all those broken places that we have as human beings, where we've been hurt, or where we've hurt other people. We've made bad choices. We've had, extreme medical situation. It was taking all that trauma, all that just disgusting feelings, those hurts that we have in our lives, and it was filling them and replacing them, making them better. So I was feeling fully healed from everything that I had been through. And I remember, as I'm thinking about this light and this love and how I'm feeling, and being changed in a way, and I said, I want to see Jesus. And I could feel he was there. I knew he was there in the hospital room. It's not like I felt alone, but the feeling was so much stronger now. It was like this magnetic pull, and yet I wasn't forced to do any of these things. I didn't have any operation of my own, so it wasn't like I could, just choose to go into the light. I had to be invited, but I thought about it, and as soon as I thought about it, then I was offered it. So everything was offered to me. Nothing was forced upon me, and that was really cool to just have that just connection, that openness, and that mutual love, and I was growing in love as I was feeling this. And that light just opened up, and it was this great big room. I mean, this room was bigger than that void that I had seen initially, and it was full of these shining beings. They had a torso like a human being, but it was full of light, and beautiful light. And some of them had more light than others, and Some of them were just more beautiful than others, but they were all beautiful. Every single one of them was just absolutely breathtaking. And they look like, when you look under a microscope and you see the cells moving or the little parts moving inside of a cell, you see all this little action. That's what it would be kind of like, except imagine that it's this sparkling, beautiful, resplendent light. That's what it looked like, just this beautiful light and all these different beings. And they all were unique, but there were, I don't know how much a trillion looks like, but I would be safe to say it was probably getting close to that. It was a lot of people. There was just so many people there. And yet in the middle of these people, there was one that was so bright. It was just obviously as resplendent as the light that I had come through and that was now surrounding this entire room. And I knew it was Jesus, but I couldn't see his face. And I said, I wanted to see your face. I said that right to him. And as soon as I said that to him, his face started to come together and I could actually see the features. But what's really bizarre about it, I don't know why I can't remember what he looks like, but when I was looking at him, I could see his face. And while I was looking at his face, I was forgetting what his face looked like. So I could see his features, and like I'm looking at you and I can see your expressions and I can see, different parts of your facial features as we're talking. I could see all of that with Jesus, and I could see him smiling at me, and I could see this love in his eyes. It's like we're all used to wearing masks, so we all know what it's like when you just see someone's eyes. I could see the love in his eyes. I could see the smile that I could see on his face. I could see that in his eyes. So that's how clearly I could see his face, but my brain wasn't able to lay down the memory, so I couldn't draw back on it. And so I'm forgetting what his face looked like as soon as I'm seeing it. Kind of like an animation, those little animation books where you flip it and the picture looks like it's moving because it just slightly changes in each one as you flip it. That's what it was like every second is changing his face. I'm losing it and so I can't remember what his face looks like, but I know that it was full of love. And what's incredible about it is we were doing my life review as I'm seeing his face. And, a lot of people have asked me, oh, isn't that terrifying? Isn't it horrible to go through all the things, you're looking at just pure love and you're going through all the horrible, disgusting things that, we do as human beings. And, none of us have risen above that. So we all have bad things. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't as if he was judging me. I was judging myself. I was looking at these things and I'm like, I can't believe I did that, as I'm looking at beauty and love and truth. And, he's smiling at me, which still amazes me because I could see how it hurt him. I could see how the things that I had done hurt other people. And those were the worst. I was really sorry. Like when I told you I was confessing all these things, I was like really sorry for these things I had done in my life. But those are big things, and I was sorry for those a long time ago. But what I didn't say I was sorry for, what I didn't even recognize, were some of the times that I didn't do something that I should have, didn't stand up for somebody that was being wronged because I was, nervous about how it was going to reflect on me or if it's going to cost me a job or things like that. And, I was looking at that and I was like, wow, that's hurt this person so much. And I could see how it hurt that person because I'm seeing that experience. And then I'm seeing how it hurt Jesus at that time. So that was really hard on me to see how I had been. And yet he was teaching me and helping me and healing me all through that process too. And it made me feel so safe and secure that he loved me despite those things. And he was showing me how I am able to be the person I was supposed to be, the person that he created. And so then I had this memory of when I was a small child. I saw my great grandmother's funeral and all my aunts and uncles and, everybody that I love were crying because she was a really beloved person in the family. So I was like a 5 or 6 year old child. I remember going home. This funeral was in Iowa and we lived in Minnesota. So it's a long drive and we got home late. And so my parents told me to go to bed and I was tired, but I wanted to pray. I wanted to ask God for a long life so that I wouldn't cause that kind of pain that I saw happening to everybody else. And I prayed for a long time. I mean, it was a really long, heartfelt prayer, where you're actually just giving your love to God. And I remember feeling like he answered that prayer. And all of a sudden this peace came over me. And I went right, climbed back in my bed and went right to sleep. Haven't thought about it until that moment. It's one of those kind of memories you're like, wake up the next day and you go play with your friends and never think about it again. But at that moment I did. And when I thought about that, I asked him, what about this? I really felt like you answered this prayer. And he said that he did answer that prayer, and that he was going to give me a long life. And, I died at 42, so I didn't consider that a long life. And, he said, yes, I will let you go back if you want. But then he asked me, why would you want to? And this was, when Jesus talks to you, it's not like he's just talking in the simple words that he's saying, which also I should say, I couldn't hear anything. It was all intellectual. So what he was thinking, I was understanding, and same thing, and same with all the other beings there, whatever they were thinking, it was like we were all connected through our minds, and it wasn't confusing, which is really interesting, because you have all your memories, you have history, you have all anybody's thoughts ever, of ideas. You had all that access because your intelligence is so increased. So I had all this going on, but it was so calm and concise, and yet there was no confusion to it, but I didn't hear anything audible. And so when he had said that, why would you want to go back? I had to think of what reason would I want to go back? And instantly I thought of my family. I said, well, my family needs me. And he showed to me how, he loves my family more than I do. And I realized that because of how much he loved me, I realized he loves everybody. I mean, he made all these people, and it's like, when you see a field of roses, it's really beautiful. It's wonderful. It's just a beautiful thing to see. And yet when you see a field of wildflowers and the total variety and how all the colors play on each other, it's even more beautiful. And that's how God looks at us, is he sees this creation of so many diverse people, personalities, and things that he really loves, because he loves each one of us in a special way. And I knew that he felt that way about my kids instantly. I felt it, and I could see how he felt about my wife. And so there was no worry there. I knew he would take care of them if I decided to stay. So what came to my mind was, well, I want to go back because of how much he loved me. I wanted to do more for him. I wanted to share his love with other people who I know that there were times in my life that I didn't feel that love. And I'm a psychotherapist. I work with people who often feel so alone and abandoned in life from all the people around them, and let alone they don't understand God. And so I was like, I want to go back to do more for you. And I didn't want a reward. That was the crazy part. It was like, there was no selfishness to any of my intentions. I simply wanted to go back to share how much he loves all of us with everybody who doesn't know, and to remind people who do know that, hey, God really does love you. It's good. Everything's great. And, so when I said that I wanted to go back to share his love, he said, that's it. And he said that I could go back for that. And so, during this, I should say that everything happened. It seemed like, when I was walking through that tunnel, and I could remember all those steps, but I was instantly there. It seemed like time really didn't exist. Like everything was happening all at the same time. And yet when I tell the story, there's this linear fashion to it. And it did seem like it developed that way, but it also seemed like it was all happening just in an instant. So while he told me that I could go back, he had also told me three things. And obviously the one of them is the share his love, but that was the third thing that he told me. But the first thing was that I needed to pray more. And the way he explained it to me was, that's how I keep my relationship with him. And it wasn't just saying prayers, that those are great. That's how we feed ourselves. That's how we keep our relationship with him. Absolutely has to happen. And he wanted me to do that more than I already was. So that was definitely part of it. but he also wanted me to, every action I did in my life, everything from now on, he wanted me to look to heaven, to look to him while I was doing it, not to do things for my own benefit. Because there's a lot of times that I had done things that are really good things in my life, like really good for other people. But I did it because I thought, well, that's the honorable thing to do, or that's that's going to make me look like a really good person, which I didn't really do that so much. I didn't think, but I guess what I did. It's hard to have to admit it, but we kind of tend to fall into that. And what he wanted me to do was he wanted me to live every moment of my life knowing that I'm working towards him. I'm doing things for him. I'm his hands. I'm his feet. I'm able to be so connected to him that I can actually do things for him in a physical form that 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 other people can benefit from. So that can be a prayer. And I was so amazed to see how doing such even little things that we might think are so far below us, but that's still benefiting his overall glory. And then that glory goes to God, and then we get the fruits of it. So he gets the glory, we get the fruit. And so that was a wonderful thing to see, because it really opened up, a lot of times we get busy in life, so we don't think we have time to pray, and we think we don't have this relationship with God. And yet we can do some things, and doing it with the intention of God, we're honoring and worshiping God that way. I found that to be so freeing, because I think I put a lot of pressure on myself about how to pray. And, I think that I got stuck doing only one type of prayer when so many different types of prayer are so much more beneficial. And then he said that I needed to suffer joyfully. Now, having just died a horrible death, it was really easy to be joyful there, right? And I knew I was going to come back to even more suffering. So that was something that I was aware of, and I was ready to take it on. But it was because I realized the suffering that Jesus went through, and he did it for me. And I couldn't believe that God would come down and save me. I couldn't believe that he would do it, for the whole world. And, a lot of people turn their back on him. So he still loves them. It's beyond my human comprehension. And when I realized that that's how he loves, I thought, well, if he can suffer, why can't I? And, I looked at life, and he was showing me how, there's just things in nature that are going to cause us to feel like we're suffering. If we get stuck in traffic, that could be a suffering, right? It's irritating. But then I look at things now, because the way he showed me is that accepting that these things are going to happen really does allow us to look for the next good thing. Because in life, we're going to have good and bad. It just randomly comes at times. But if we fixate on the negative, we're going to miss all the good that keeps coming by. And that's how we can suffer joyfully, is that when we take and accept the things that we're having, and for me, having that bad heart and other organs that have been attacked, and they still cause me issues, and there's pain. And yet, when I look at that and I say, wow, that's working towards my eternal glory. It's shaping me to be a better person. I'm not the same selfish person I used to be. And had I not had that, I would have relied on my own personal physical strength forever until I couldn't do it anymore. Eventually, you're going to lose it when you get old enough. But I was so reliant on those things. And I think a lot of times we feel like, as long as we have good health, we've got power, and we've got money, and we've got these things, we have control. And to have a loss of control can really upset us. And yet, when we hold on to God's hand, we have trust in him, then we can suffer joyfully. So it was beautiful. It was just an awakening for me. And then the last thing, of course, like I said, was to share his love. So he really wanted me to just give love to people, to not refuse them the love that I could give to them. And particularly, like I said, with the prayers, keeping it in line with him, knowing that maybe this person's treating me poorly, and I am justified to have, say something, or to not have anything to do with this person. But is that really going to help the person? And how does God look at them instead of the way that I do? And that's the key to it, is that I'm starting to look at people and I say, well, I see some ugly things, but that's because of how I feel. And that's, probably related to me personally. God doesn't look at them only that way. He sees something beautiful. And why am I not seeing it? So then I look for it. And it's amazing when you actually look for good in other people, you'll find it. It's crazy. Even people that you think you might not ever find good in, that there's a way to find it. If you look hard enough, you'll see something. And that's the key. That's where you can show them love based on that. And then hopefully that will help change that person. And it's that ripple effect that we're looking for. So then he said that now I had to go back, and I had to go back the exact same way that I had come in. So I started going back. And as soon as I turned to go back, I lost sight of Jesus. So I wasn't able to see him behind me now. And so I go through the light and I see my tunnel. I go into my tunnel. But at the end of my tunnel isn't that dark void anymore. It's my hospital room. And I'm seeing it from the view of me laying there on the bed. But obviously my eyes were closed, but I could still see the whole room, even aspects, all around me. So I'm walking back towards my hospital room, and I'm seeing what they're doing. They're giving me CPR through this machine that was doing the CPR compressions. But I snapped back into my body, and they had taken that machine off. So that was something that really helped me, because I didn't believe in near-death experiences before this. I was very science-based. What we can prove is the only thing. If we've never created a scientific instrument that can measure God or the afterlife. So, I was very limited in my scientific approach as it was, but I thought I knew everything about science, right? I was very, very science-based on what we know. And now it was completely shattered, because when I got back, I ended up asking, what was that machine? And they said, well, we took that off before you fully came back. So how did you see that? And so that was a nice confirmation.